Ever feel like you can't get away from the news? Over coffee, on your commute, in the quiet just before bed, it's like there's no off switch anymore. And all that noise? It's doing more than cluttering your brain. Mental health experts now have a name for this modern-day overload: headline stress disorder. And it's more than just a catchy label. Researchers at the Mayo Clinic say this condition has real impacts on your mental health.
It's sometimes called headline stress disorder. Some people call it news anxiety. It's basically the psychological and physical effects of consuming too much distressing news content. And it can look a lot of ways. It can, manifest anxiety. It can cause higher stress levels. And it can even just suddenly your heart starts beating faster. You start to feel a little upset stomach. It can trigger a lot of body responses, of course.
That's Don Grant, a media psychologist and national advisor of healthy device management for Newport Healthcare. Along with the symptoms he describes, the stress from constantly consuming news can trigger headaches, GI issues, and back pain. So how do you protect yourself while still staying informed? Where's the line? Brian McLaughlin, associate professor in the Department of Advertising at Texas Tech University, says there are some clear red flags that can signal you're in too deep.
We classify problematic news consumption based on 5 criteria. The first is transportation, which is the tendency to kind of get really drawn in when you're consuming the news. You kind of really, all your focus and attention's there. You're kind of not paying attention to things around you. You're just kind of focused on that news, getting really absorbed in it. The second is preoccupation, the tendency to kind of continue thinking about the news even when you're done consuming. So you kind of find your mind drifting back and kind of thinking about what's happening, what's going on, getting concerned about it. Third is misregulation, is this tendency to kind of consume news thinking that maybe it'll help you feel better, but ultimately it makes you feel worse, or trying to figure out what's going on, that again makes you feel worse. The fourth is underregulation, which is kind of those compulsive habits, that inability to stop doing it, just kind of always finding yourself kind of daily developing these habits where you're just consistently doing it. Potentially as a consequence of that, the fifth is interference, which is when news starts kind of interfering with our day-to-day lives, that we can't focus at work, we're having trouble sleeping just because we're either consuming the news or thinking about it so much that we're having a hard time going about our daily lives.
In 2022, McLaughlin published a study in the scientific journal Health Communication that found that a growing number of Americans are consuming the news in unhealthy ways, even describing it as a form of addiction. According to his research, more than 16% of people surveyed showed signs of being severely problematic news consumers. Of this group, most reported physical and mental health ailments, along with trouble focusing on work, school, and family. While experts have worried about this overload since the 24-hour news cycle kicked off in the 1980s, social media has turned it into a harder habit to break. Always on, always in your pocket.
It can definitely make it worse. And a lot of it's just the accessibility of it. I mean, it's always there. One, with, smartphones and things like that, you can just always get to it. But then there's also just kind of a never-ending stream with social media. You can always find another TikTok video or another tweet to kind of go through. So for people that do get drawn in into doom scroll, it's always available, never-ending well that you can kind of keep going back to. So it certainly has the opportunity to kind of make the problem worse and keep it prolonged.
Grant also points to the invention of the iPhone as a driver of headline stress disorder. Before smartphones, people got their news at set times during the day from print newspapers, TV, and radio. Now, news can be consumed from anywhere at any time. Combine this with smart social media algorithms designed to pull you down a rabbit hole, and it's easy to develop a screen addiction that feels impossible to kick. To make matters worse, with the flood of misinformation, disinformation, and AI-generated content online, Grant says he's seen people get worked up over false news.
It used to be that if we saw something in a newspaper or on a news broadcast or on the radio, we could pretty much assume it had been vetted and it was believable and the veracity of it was good. Now, with disinformation, fake news, anyone can write anything. And we've seen this where people just write. I've seen that suddenly, the Leaning Tower of Pisa fell and there's an AI generated image of it and it's clickbait. Because I'm like, oh my goodness, the Leaning Tower of Pisa fell, but it's a clickbait. So we also have to be careful. And now today, all users and all consumers of anything that's digital, that's content, need to be very aware. One piece of wrong information that can be very stressful. The Leaning Tower of Pisa fell with an image can get spread so quickly through these echo chambers on social media that it can cause so much collective stress, overwhelm.
Fake news comes in all forms, but headlines about death and disaster hit the hardest and can quickly gain speed, like the viral claim about the Leaning Tower of Pisa toppling over. Whether the story is fake or real, research shows that news about terror attacks, mass shootings, and other extreme events trigger more anxiety than almost any other kind of coverage. And while this kind of reporting can rattle anyone, Grant says it's especially tough on one group in particular.
I work with kids in Newport. That's our population, adolescents and young adults. And I talk to them about this. It is everything now is news. So things that we would never know about, things that, I call it being overexposed and underdeveloped for the kids. They can't handle it. So things that we would never have heard about that are concerning, but that happen in other countries or that happen, things that are more localized or regionalized, something that would happen, in another state. Or now there's so much scramble for content that all of this, we know everything about everything.
Staying informed is important, but it's easy to overdo it. For instance, stories about murders or assaults get a lot of coverage, but violent crimes in the U.S. have actually gone down significantly since the 90s. Yet most people think it's getting worse. Why? Because when we're bombarded with bad news, even from far away, our brains start seeing threats everywhere. McLaughlin says it can be helpful to ask, is this news keeping me aware or stuck in fight or flight?
We don't think that people should stop consuming the news because there's a lot of important information in the news. A lot of it comes down to just kind of developing a better relationship with the news. And the first step is developing an understanding of what your relationship to the news is, right? And so a lot of people have these compulsive habits, but they're not really paying attention to them until to the point they get to like a breaking point, right? And then they feel like the stress is overwhelming and they just stop. So just starting by paying more attention to it's helpful. We found that mindfulness is negatively related to problematic news consumption. So people that have more mindfulness in general, who are capable of kind of taking a step away from the news and focusing on what's going around them in the here and now, and having that kind of break from the news is really important for mental health.
The next step? Set some boundaries, like scanning the news only over your morning coffee or after dinner. Also, stick to a few trusted sources that are fact-based and direct. Grant says that even small changes like these can make a big difference in headline stress disorder symptoms and can boost overall happiness.
Pick one or two news sources that you really trust, that have proven to you that they're really giving you correct information. And just check them maybe in the morning and maybe at night, but not before you go to bed in case you see something distressing that's happened in the world. So my suggestion would be bookend or just only have a couple of times when you check the news. Set a timer if you have to. Do not be on social media or these news platforms for more than 15 minutes. When you're with other people or when you're in real life and you're in commitment, you have commitments or you're doing other things, turn off your phone or turn off the alerts and the sounds so you don't get these constant barrage of alerts of these so-called breaking news. Have tech-free periods in your home. Never have them at meals. And before you go to bed, certainly, because what's going to happen is if you see something that's distressing or dysregulating or causes you anxiety, some news story before you go to bed, it's going to possibly cause you to have disruptive or not really good sleep.
To find out more about Don Grant, Brian McLaughlin, and all our featured guests, visit viewpointsradio.org. This segment was written and produced by Grace Galante and Amira Zaveri. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Gary Price.